Hey, Algebra kiddos. First of all, I want you to tell Mrs. Ray thank you for being here. All right. Next, I want you to go ahead and take out your packets. We are turning in your packet past that review that we skipped, and we are on to 8.7, factoring special products. Now, throughout this chapter, there's quite a few little things that we're going to do that are like tricks, okay? So this isn't one that you necessarily have to do. This first part, you're going to need to make sure that you know, but the rest of it is still going to be something that where you can slide and divide. So we're going to start with the difference of squares. So go ahead and write this down in that box that says difference of squares. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to show you what that means. So basically I have the perfect square root of this, which would be 1 and 16. I know the square root of both of 1 and 16. So I'm going to do my two sets of parentheses just like I always do. And the square root of 1 is just 1. So I'm going to split those up. And the square root of 16 is just 4. Now, since it is the difference, the difference of squares, that means I'm going to have these are going to be different. And the reason this works, okay, is because if I go back and I FOIL this out, x squared, that's going to be minus 16. This is going to be plus 4x, and this one is going to be a minus 4x. So those are actually going to cancel, right? This is why I like to see George in my pictures, because then we don't have to do the face and the nose at all, just his eyebrows. And so I can work it out that way. So when I look at number 2, all I need to do is, do I know the square root of both of these? Well, then that's going to be 2x plus 7 and 2x, well, I need a 2, minus 7. All right, again, I know the perfect squares of the next two. So it's going to be 3x and y, and then I'm going to have 3x and y, and again, a plus and a minus throughout. Now, when I get to number 4, this one gets a little tricky because I don't know the square root of 2, and I also don't know the square root of 50. They're irrational numbers. However, I can factor out a 2. When I do that, I now have, and notice how this is a minus sign. All of these are minus signs throughout, right? Because it's difference, which means subtraction. But we're going to do two different things. Keep that 2 out front. And I'm going to do x and 5, because the square root of 25 is 5, and then a plus and a minus. And again, the order doesn't matter with those. You can go in any order. Okay, so the next one is the perfect square trinomials. Now again, write this down. Take a second and write this down. And this is going to be one that you do not have to do. A lot of people actually forget about this. And so what we are going to do is I'll show you how you can do it just normally, but then I'll show you the shortcut way. So when I look at this, what I'm really looking for is the front and the last, and again, perfect squares. I got 1 and 36. That means I can do 2 sets of parentheses. I can do n and n. I can do 6 and 6. And then this is positive and this is negative, which means they're both going to be negative. Because when I FOIL this out, it's going to give me n squared. It's going to give me a positive 36. It's going to give me a negative 6n and a negative 6n, which would give me a negative 12n, okay, which goes back to my original. What we're seeing is the perfect squares because these are both perfect squares and then they factor back out. Now you can write it as n minus 6 and n minus 6, or you can write it as n minus 6 quantity squared. Either one is acceptable. I don't care which way you use it. Again, I can do, okay, well 9 and 4, those are both perfect squares. So I can do the square root of both, so 3x and 4, 3x and 4. Notice that they're going to be the same sign, both negatives, and so that goes in there. When I do FOIL this back out, I do get, that's going to be 3 times, oh, I messed up. Hold on. We're going to go backwards. It's not 4. That's actually going to be 2. Yikes. Hopefully somebody caught that. Because when I do FOIL back out, that would be 6x and a 6x. So a negative 6 and a negative 6 is going to give me a negative 12x. Okay? Now, however, what you can also do is you can still slide and divide this. You don't have to write this down right now. But I have x squared minus 12x plus 36. So you can still go ahead and say, okay, well that's going to be x minus 6 and x minus 6. And I need to just keep working from here. And that I can then divide by, let's see, I slid my 9 over, divide by 9, and that reduces down to 2/3, which my 3 pops over, and it's the same thing. Okay, so I still can slide and divide. That's totally okay. All right, in the third one, again, there's a negative. We don't like negatives up front. We still don't like negatives up front, so I'm going to factor out a 3. Okay, when I do that, I end up with y squared. That's going to be minus 12y, and that's going to be plus 36. Well, I know what that one is. They're both perfect squares. So I have y, and I've got a 6 and a 6, and they're both minus. Or you can write it like this, quantity squared. Okay? Either one, again, works. Fabulous. Okay, now at the very bottom, all we're doing here that's different is we are solving. So we're just taking it that extra step farther. All right, so I can't take anything out, so I'm going to do my 2 sets of parentheses. Perfect squares, both here. I've got an x and a 4 and a 4. And what I need to do is I need to add both of those together, which gives me my answer of a negative 4 for both. Okay? Again, when I get to number 2, I could solve this right away, or I can say, well, what can I factor out? Well, if I factor out a 4, that gives me w squared minus 9, okay? This is going to be a difference of squares. So I've got my 4 out front. I've got a w plus 3 and a w minus 3, which is equals 0, which is going to be a negative 3 and a positive 3 for your answers. Okay. When I get to number 3, I don't think I can factor anything out of this. 4, no, 4 doesn't come out of all of them. Okay, so what I'm gonna have to do here is I'm actually perfect square. Great news there. So that's 2f, It's going to be, let's see, that's minus 36, that means they're both minus. And it's gonna be 9 and 9. Okay, and then my answer, let's see, that would be a negative 18, which does give me 36. Perfect. And my answer is going to be a positive 9/2. And that's just going to be written twice, which is fine. All right, moving on. We're going to take number 4, and I'm going to move, it's going to be 6p squared minus 864 equals 0. Now, that's a big number. Use your calculator, ladies and gents. I'm going to assume that a 6 is going to come out. And guess what? It does. If I divide 864 by 6, it gives me a negative 144, which is a perfect square. Imagine that. All right. So I've got p minus 12 and p plus 12, which gives me answers of 12 and a negative 12. Fabuloso. And finally, last one, I gotta move my 36 over. Oh, we're gonna change those to x's. I don't like the z's and the 2's being together. Plus 12x, that's gonna be plus 36 equals 0. I have perfect squares. What do you know? That's gonna be x plus 6 and x plus 6, which means both of my answers are going to be a negative 6. And you don't have to write them twice. You can write it just one time. Okay, now what your next task is going to be to do 2 Quizlet Lives, and then we are moving to the CK12 independent practice. I am only going to have you do odds today, 1 through 25. Let's see, 1 through 25. We're just going to go ahead and do the odds, and that will be your homework after you do the Quizlet practice. Let me know if you have questions.